From Tupac's violent assault on the director's 2R, Kelly's stolen hit song, and a Guinness World Record for the youngest filmmakers in Hollywood history, the making of Menace II Society was more chaotic than the streets of Watts it portrayed. Behind the cameras lurked gang security, celebrity casting disasters, and production secrets that would make O-Dog himself say, "Damn, that's crazy." Prepare to discover the wild, untold stories that happened when the Hughes brothers tried to bring South Central to the silver screen. Fact 1. Guinness World Record holders. When Albert and Alan Hughes stepped onto the set of Menace II Society in 1992, they weren't just making their directorial debut, they were making history. The twin brothers officially hold the Guinness World Record as the youngest filmmakers to ever direct a major Hollywood motion picture, accomplishing this incredible feat at just 21 years old. To put this achievement in perspective, most people their age were still figuring out college majors or entry-level jobs, while the Hughes brothers were commanding million-dollar budgets and working with established actors in one of the most challenging film genres. The record wasn't something they set out to achieve, it was simply the natural result of two incredibly driven young men who had been making movies since they were 12 years old. Their journey to this historic moment began in high school when Alan took a television production class, sparking both brothers' formal film education. They quickly gained attention with short films like How to Be a Burglar and Uncensored, which was actually broadcast on cable television and introduced them to a wider audience. What makes their record even more remarkable is that Menace II Society wasn't just a vanity project or small independent film, it was a major studio production backed by New Line Cinema with a budget of $3.5 million. The film premiered at the prestigious Cannes Film Festival and went on to gross nearly 10 times its budget, proving that age doesn't determine talent or vision. In October 2012, on the eve of the film's 20th anniversary, Alan and Albert were officially honored with their Guinness World Record recognition, cementing their place in cinema history as the youngest directors to ever helm a major Hollywood motion picture at the time of release. Fact 2. Tupac's 30-man gang assault. One of the most shocking incidents in Hollywood history occurred when Tupac Shakur orchestrated a brutal attack on director Alan Hughes with nearly 30 gang members, turning a routine music video shoot into a violent confrontation that would land the rapper in jail. The assault happened in 1994, about 6 months after Tupac had been fired from his role as Sharif in Menace II Society, and it stemmed from the bad blood that had developed between the rapper and the Hughes brothers during the film's troubled production. The attack took place while the Hughes brothers were filming a music video for Spice One's song Trigga Gots No Heart, which was part of the Menace II Society soundtrack. Tupac arrived at the video shoot with what witnesses described as an entourage of approximately 30 people, many of whom were gang affiliates. According to eyewitness accounts, Tupac ordered his crew to attack Alan Hughes, and the director found himself fighting what seemed like an army of attackers. As one cast member later recalled, "Alan is on the ground or whatever, but it was like he was fighting like 30 people." What made this incident even more bizarre was that Tupac actually confessed to the assault on national television. During an appearance on MTV's Yo! MTV Raps, Tupac openly bragged about the attack, telling host Ed Lover, "They fired me but did it in a roundabout punk way, so I caught them on the streets and whipped their behinds." He even went so far as to say, "I was a menace to the Hughes brothers and it ain't over." This televised confession was later used as evidence in court, and Tupac was convicted of assault and battery. He was sentenced to 15 days in jail, 15 days of community service, and 30 months of probation for orchestrating one of the most documented celebrity assaults in entertainment history. Fact 3. Eazy-E was originally O-Dog. Long before Lorenz Tate brought the psychotic character of O-Dog to life on screen, the role was originally written specifically for NWA legend Eazy-E, who had developed a close mentoring relationship with director Alan Hughes during the early 1990s. Hughes has revealed that Eazy-E was his first real OG mentor in the business, and that the volatile, trigger-happy character of O-Dog was crafted with the Compton rapper's personality and screen presence in mind, making it seem like a perfect casting choice for the controversial figure who had helped popularize gangsta rap. However, the collaboration quickly soured when Eazy-E and his notorious manager Jerry Heller began demanding extensive control over the script and the film's direction. According to Hughes, the two men tried to keep you in a box and control you, and were attempting to dictate changes to the screenplay that would have fundamentally altered the story the Hughes brothers wanted to tell. The situation became so problematic that Hughes was forced to drop Eazy-E from the project entirely, even though it meant losing a major name that could have helped the film's marketability. The experience proved to be unexpectedly educational for the young director, as it gave him first-hand insight into the business practices that had torn apart one of hip-hop's most influential groups. As Hughes later explained, "I learned everything from Eazy. But one of the things with him and Jerry is they always try to keep you in a box and control you. And they were trying to control us in the script, and I just had to move on." He added, "I see why Cube left. I see why Dre left. There was a whole thing there." This casting disaster inadvertently helped Hughes understand the controlling management style that had driven Dr. Dre and Ice Cube away from NWA, providing him with a behind-the-scenes education about the music industry's power struggles. Fact 4. MC Ren's religious exit. In a move that perfectly demonstrates how personal convictions can override career opportunities, NWA member MC Ren walked away from what could have been his breakout acting role in Menace II Society when his religious beliefs came into direct conflict with the character he was supposed to portray. The rapper had originally been cast to play AWAX, the older gang member and mentor figure who becomes one of Kane's closest criminal associates throughout the film, but his spiritual journey took an unexpected turn that would change everything. In late 1992, while he was in the middle of recording his debut solo album, MC Ren made the life-changing decision to join the Nation of Islam under the guidance of DJ Train, a move that completely transformed his worldview and priorities. The timing couldn't have been more complicated, as he was simultaneously preparing for his role in what was shaping up to be one of the most anticipated urban dramas of the decade. The Nation of Islam's strict teachings about morality, violence, and the portrayal of African Americans in media created an irreconcilable conflict with the violent, criminal character of AWAX that Ren was supposed to embody on screen. Rather than compromise his newfound religious convictions, MC Ren made the difficult decision to turn down the role entirely, effectively walking away from what could have been a major Hollywood breakthrough that might have launched a successful acting career alongside his music. His departure from the project was so significant that it forced the production to scramble for a replacement, ultimately leading to MC Ite being cast in the role of AWAX. This decision also impacted Ren's music career, as he scrapped his original album Life Sentence and instead released Shock of the Hour in 1993, which reflected his new religious perspective and became notably more focused on social issues and spiritual themes. Fact 5. R. Kelly's stolen blockbuster. One of the most brazen acts of music industry theft occurred when Jive Records executive Barry Weiss literally stole what would become R. Kelly's biggest hit right out from under the Menace II Society soundtrack, depriving the film of a song that was specifically created for its story and characters. The Hughes Brothers, who served as executive producers on the soundtrack, had made a deal with Jive Records to secure an original track from R. Kelly, who at that time had only released one album and was not yet the massive star he would later become. Alan Hughes personally flew to Chicago to meet with R. Kelly and gave him a VHS copy of the movie to inspire his songwriting process. The collaboration seemed perfect, as both the artist and the filmmakers shared the same lawyer, making the business arrangement smooth and straightforward. After watching the film, R. Kelly returned the next day with a brand new song he had written specifically for Menace II Society, and Hughes immediately recognized its potential when he heard it for the first time. Excited about the quality of the track, Hughes called Barry Weiss at Jive Records to share the good news about R. Kelly's contribution to the soundtrack. However, what happened next was a devastating betrayal that Hughes still talks about decades later. According to Hughes, Weiss called him back a week later with crushing news, saying, "I got good news and bad news. The good news is you're right, this is going to be his first #1 record. The bad news is it's not going on the soundtrack." The song was Bump and Grind, which would indeed become R. Kelly's first #1 hit and one of the defining tracks of the 1990s. Hughes has revealed that the song's famous opening lyrics, "My mind's telling me no, but my body's telling me yes," were actually written about the movie's characters Kane, Ronnie, and Purnell, making the theft even more personal and frustrating for the filmmakers. Fact 6. Film crew in mirror blooper. One of the most glaring production mistakes in Menace II Society happens during the film's most intense and memorable scene, where the entire camera crew becomes inadvertently visible to viewers who know where to look. The blooper occurs during the pivotal liquor store robbery sequence, specifically when O-Dog grabs the Korean store owner's wife and forces her toward the back room to retrieve the surveillance tape. As O-Dog pushes the terrified woman toward the back of the store, sharp-eyed viewers can clearly see the reflection of the entire film crew in the round security mirror mounted on the ceiling above the beer coolers. The reflection shows multiple crew members, cameras, and equipment following the action as it unfolds, completely breaking the illusion that this is a real convenience store robbery rather than a carefully orchestrated film production. The mistake is particularly noticeable on the DVD release of the film, where the higher video quality makes the reflected crew members even more obvious to anyone paying attention to the background details. What makes this blooper especially surprising is that it occurs during one of the most critical scenes in the entire movie, the moment that sets the entire plot in motion and establishes O-Dog as an unpredictable and dangerous character. The liquor store sequence is also one of the most technically complex scenes in the film, involving multiple camera angles, precise timing for the violence, and careful coordination between the actors to create the realistic and shocking atmosphere that the Hughes brothers were aiming for. Despite all this careful planning and the scene's importance to the overall story, the production team somehow missed the fact that their security mirror was capturing everything happening behind the cameras, creating a permanent record of their filmmaking process that eagle-eyed viewers continue to spot more than 30 years after the movie's release. Fact 7. Real gang security on set. In one of the most unconventional security arrangements in Hollywood history, the production of Menace II Society hired actual members of the Grape Street Watts Crips to serve as on-set security during filming in the Jordan Downs housing projects, essentially paying real gang members to protect the cast and crew while they made a movie about gang life. This decision wasn't made for dramatic effect or authenticity purposes, but out of practical necessity, since the film was being shot in one of Los Angeles's most dangerous neighborhoods during a particularly volatile time in the early 1990s. The Jordan Downs housing projects, where much of the film takes place, were the actual territory of the Grape Street Watts Crips, a powerful street gang that had controlled the area since the 1970s. The housing complex, which consisted of 700 units spread across 103 buildings, was considered one of the most dangerous locations in all of Los Angeles. With regular shootings, drug dealing, and territorial disputes making it an extremely risky place to bring expensive film equipment and Hollywood actors. Rather than try to work around the gang's presence or bring in outside security that might create additional tension, the Hughes brothers made the pragmatic decision to hire the Grape Street Crips directly. This arrangement proved to be mutually beneficial, as the gang members were paid legitimate money for their security services while ensuring that the film production could operate safely in their territory without interference from rival gangs or local criminals who might have seen the expensive equipment as an easy target. The decision also added an extra layer of authenticity to the film, since many of the background residents seen walking through the housing projects were actual Jordan Downs inhabitants, creating a genuine atmosphere that would have been nearly impossible to replicate on a studio backlot or in a safer neighborhood. Fact 8. Profanity Rate World Record. Menace II Society earned an unusual place in cinema history by achieving one of the highest profanity rates ever recorded in a major motion picture, with the F-word appearing at a staggering rate of 3.07 times per minute throughout the film's entire runtime. This incredible frequency of profanity wasn't the result of gratuitous swearing for shock value, but rather reflected the Hughes Brothers' commitment to authentically portraying the street language and dialogue they had grown up hearing in South-Central Los Angeles during the late 1980s and early 1990s. The record-breaking profanity rate becomes even more impressive when you consider that the film runs for approximately 104 minutes, meaning that audiences hear the F-word over 300 times during a single viewing. This level of profanity was so extreme that it contributed to the film receiving an R rating from the Motion Picture Association of America, and it actually caused problems for the movie in some international markets, where censorship boards were not prepared for such intense language throughout an entire feature film. What makes this profanity record particularly significant is that it wasn't achieved through rapid-fire cursing or artificially inflated dialogue, but through the natural speech patterns of characters who used profanity as a regular part of their everyday vocabulary. The Hughes brothers felt that toning down the language would have made the film feel inauthentic and would have betrayed the reality of the environment they were trying to portray on screen. The high profanity rate also reflected the influence of hip-hop culture on the film, as rap music of that era frequently featured explicit language, and many of the cast members, including MC Ite and other rappers-turned-actors, brought that linguistic style directly into their performances, creating a soundtrack of street dialogue that was as raw and unfiltered as the violent world the characters inhabited. Fact 9. Spice One's mysterious firing. While Tupac Shakur's dramatic exit from Menace II Society is well documented and widely discussed, the firing of rapper Spice One from the lead role of Kane remains one of the most mysterious casting changes in the film's troubled production history, with very few details ever being revealed about why he was let go from what would have been his major acting debut. Spice One, whose real name is Robert Greene Jr., was originally cast to play the central character of Kane Lawson, the conflicted young man trying to escape the cycle of violence in South-Central Los Angeles, who ultimately became the heart and soul of the entire movie. The Bay Area rapper was considered a natural choice for the role, as he had already established himself as a credible voice in gangsta rap with his authentic street credibility and his ability to tell vivid stories about urban life through his music. His casting alongside Tupac Shakur would have created a powerful duo of established rap artists making their transition into serious dramatic acting, potentially giving the film even more street credibility and marketing appeal among hip-hop audiences who were already familiar with both artists' musical work. However, Spice One was dismissed from the production at the same time as Tupac, shortly after filming began in 1992, but unlike Tupac's highly publicized conflicts with the Hughes brothers, the reasons for Spice One's departure have never been clearly explained by anyone involved in the production. While some sources suggest that his firing was related to the same general disruptions that led to Tupac's dismissal, there are no documented accounts of specific incidents, arguments, or creative disagreements that would explain why the Hughes brothers felt compelled to replace him with the relatively unknown Tyrone Turner, who ultimately delivered one of the most memorable performances in 1990s urban cinema, despite having no significant acting experience before landing the role. Fact 10. Prison riot scene, too intense. One of the most violent and chaotic sequences ever filmed for Menace II Society was a prison riot scene featuring Kane that was so intense and brutal it would have pushed the movie into NC-17 territory, forcing the Hughes brothers to completely cut it from both the theatrical release and even the director's cut that was later released on DVD and Blu-ray. The scene was meant to show Kane's experience in prison and would have added another layer to his character's exposure to violence and institutional brutality, but the content proved to be too extreme for any mainstream theatrical release. the prison riot sequence presented multiple challenges for the 21-year-old directors, who quickly discovered that staging large-scale fight scenes required technical expertise they simply didn't possess at that point in their careers. Albert Hughes later admitted that the scene was horrifically bad and revealed that they didn't know how to stage a fucking fight during the production. The inexperienced filmmakers found themselves trying to coordinate dozens of extras in a complex action sequence without any stunt coordinators or professional fight choreographers, resulting in footage where you could see all the punches coming, and the violence looked completely unconvincing on camera. The failed prison riot scene became one of the most demoralizing experiences of the entire production for the Hughes brothers, contributing to their growing anxiety about the quality of their debut film. The scene was shot during the early days of filming, and its poor execution was one of the reasons Albert Hughes told his brother Alan on the third day of production that their careers were over and the movie was terrible. The sequence was ultimately scrapped entirely, and interestingly, it remains one of the few deleted scenes that has never been made available to the public in any form, not even as a special feature on home video releases, suggesting that the Hughes brothers remain embarrassed by the amateur quality of their early attempt at large-scale action filmmaking. Fact 11. Ice Cube's regretful rejection. In what would become one of the most regrettable career decisions in hip-hop acting history, Ice Cube turned down the opportunity to play the psychotic character of O-Dog in Menace II Society, a role that would have reunited him with the urban drama genre just 2 years after his powerful performance in Boys and the Hood. The former NWA member was actually the Hughes brothers' first choice for the volatile character, before Larenz Tate was even considered for the role, and his casting would have brought serious star power and street credibility to an already impressive ensemble cast. However, Ice Cube made the strategic decision to pass on the role because he was concerned about being typecast as a Los Angeles gangster in every future film project he might pursue. Having just played the intense character of Doughboy in John Singleton's acclaimed Boys and the Hood in 1991, Ice Cube was worried that accepting another similar role would limit his range as an actor and pigeonhole him into playing the same type of character for the rest of his acting career. At the time, his reasoning seemed sound, as he was trying to establish himself as a versatile performer who could take on different types of roles rather than being seen as just another rapper playing a gangster. Years later, after watching Larenz Tate's unforgettable performance as the unhinged O-Dog, Ice Cube openly admitted that turning down the role was a major mistake that he deeply regretted. During an appearance on the Guest List podcast, Ice Cube confessed, "I would say Menace II Society," when asked about scripts he regretted passing on, explaining, "I had a shot to do O-Dog, even though I think Larenz Tate killed it. I just didn't want to be typecast, you know what I mean? I was like, I just did Boys and the Hood, and they just gonna have me be the LA gangbanger every damn movie? That was one movie that when I saw it, I was like, ooh, that role is cold." Fact 12. Two gangster actor cut. In one of the most unusual editing decisions in film history, the Hughes brothers completely removed an entire scene from Menace II Society because they determined that one of the actors was simply too gangster for the movie, creating the bizarre situation where someone's authentic street credibility actually worked against them in a film specifically about gang life. The deleted scene featured an unidentified actor whose real-life persona and mannerisms were so genuinely intimidating and street-authentic that his presence on screen felt out of place within the carefully constructed narrative and framework the directors had created. The problem wasn't that the actor gave a bad performance or couldn't deliver his lines convincingly, but rather that his authentic gangster persona was so overwhelming that it disrupted the balance of the film and created a character who felt disconnected from the main storyline. According to the Hughes brothers, this unnamed actor had no meaningful story connection to the central plot involving Kane, O-Dog, and their crew, which made his intensely authentic street presence feel like an unnecessary distraction rather than an asset to the overall movie. This cutting decision reveals the delicate balance that filmmakers must strike when trying to create authentic portrayals of street life while still maintaining a coherent narrative structure. While the Hughes brothers were committed to bringing real-life authenticity to their depiction of South Central Los Angeles, they discovered that sometimes genuine street credibility could actually work against the storytelling process if it wasn't properly integrated into the script. The fact that someone could be considered too gangster for a movie about gangsters highlights the difference between real-life street authenticity and the carefully crafted characters needed to serve a film's dramatic purposes. The deleted scene has never been released in any form, and the identity of the two gangster actor remains a mystery that the Hughes brothers have never publicly revealed, leaving this unusual casting decision as one of the film's most intriguing behind-the-scenes stories. Fact 13. Tupac's MTV confession. In what has to be one of the most self-incriminating celebrity interviews in television history, Tupac Shakur openly bragged about assaulting the Hughes brothers during a live appearance on MTV's Yo! MTV Raps, essentially confessing to a violent crime on national television and providing prosecutors with the evidence they would later use to convict him in court. The interview took place in 1993, shortly after Tupac had orchestrated the brutal attack on director Allen Hughes, and it demonstrated either incredible boldness or remarkable poor judgment on the rapper's part. During the MTV appearance, host Ed Lover asked Tupac about his firing from Menace II Society and the subsequent violent incident that had made headlines in the entertainment industry. Rather than deflecting the question or denying his involvement, Tupac enthusiastically confessed to the assault, telling the national television audience, "They fired me but did it in a roundabout punk way, so I caught them on the streets and whipped their behinds. I was a menace to the Hughes brothers, and it ain't over." Ed Lover, recognizing that Tupac was essentially incriminating himself on live television, actually tried to cover the rapper's mouth to prevent him from saying anything more that could be used against him in court. However, the damage was already done, as MTV had captured Tupac's confession on videotape, creating permanent evidence of his admission of guilt that would prove invaluable to prosecutors when the case went to trial. The Hughes brothers' legal team used the MTV footage as a key piece of evidence in their assault case against Tupac, and the rapper's own words from the television interview helped secure his conviction on charges of assault and battery. This case became a textbook example of how celebrities can damage their own legal defense by speaking too freely to the media, as Tupac's desire to publicly boast about the attack ultimately provided the prosecution with exactly the evidence they needed to prove his guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. Fact 14. Real residents as extras. One of the most authentic aspects of Menace II Society came from the Hughes brothers' decision to use actual residents of the Jordan Downs housing projects as background extras throughout the film, creating an unprecedented level of realism that would have been impossible to achieve with professional actors or hired extras from casting agencies. When viewers watch Kane and O-Dog walking through the housing complex or see people going about their daily lives in the background of various scenes, they're actually witnessing real residents of one of Los Angeles's most notorious public housing developments living their normal lives while a major Hollywood production unfolds around them. The Jordan Downs housing projects, which served as the primary filming location for many of the movie's most important scenes, consisted of 700 units spread across 103 buildings, housing thousands of residents who had been living with the daily realities of gang violence, poverty, and police harassment that the film was attempting to portray. Rather than bringing in outsiders to play these residents, the Hughes brothers made the creative decision to incorporate the actual community members into their film, allowing the real inhabitants of Jordan Downs to essentially play themselves in the background of the movie. This casting approach served multiple purposes for the production, as it not only saved money on hiring professional extras but also helped the filmmakers gain the trust and cooperation of the local community, which was essential for shooting safely in such a volatile environment. The real residents brought an authenticity to the film that professional actors simply couldn't have replicated, as their natural body language, clothing choices, and interactions with each other reflected the genuine atmosphere of life in the projects rather than a Hollywood interpretation of what that life might look like. The decision also created a unique collaborative relationship between the film production and the Jordan Downs community, making the movie feel like a genuine document of a specific time and place rather than a fictional recreation. Fact 15. Third-day career crisis. Just 3 days into filming what would become their breakthrough debut feature, the Hughes brothers were convinced they had completely destroyed their careers before they had even truly begun, with Alan Hughes delivering the devastating assessment to his twin brother Albert that, "Our careers are over. This movie is bad. It's terrible." This moment of crushing self-doubt came after the 21-year-old directors had shot several scenes that they found so poorly executed and amateurish that they believed their dream of becoming major Hollywood filmmakers was already finished. The scenes that triggered this career crisis were described by the Hughes brothers as horrifically bad, and they included sequences that the inexperienced directors simply didn't know how to handle properly, such as the disastrous prison riot scene, where they admitted they had no idea how to choreograph fight scenes or coordinate large groups of actors. Albert Hughes later recalled that there were so many technical and creative problems with the footage they had shot during those first few days that they seriously considered whether they should continue with the production or find some way to exit the project before making things even worse. What made this crisis of confidence particularly devastating was that the Hughes brothers had worked for years to get the opportunity to direct their first major motion picture, and they had put everything on the line to make Menace II Society a reality. The thought that they might have blown their one shot at Hollywood success before they had even completed a week of filming was emotionally crushing for the young filmmakers who had been making short films and music videos since they were 12 years old in preparation for this moment. Fortunately for cinema history, the brothers decided to push through their doubts and continue filming, ultimately creating one of the most influential urban dramas of the 1990s, though they spent the rest of the production hoping for the best but preparing for the worst, and only realized they had created something special during the editing process.